The man would tell police, quote, "I was like, oh my God, I'm just going to start killing people." And then he did. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen. Viewer discretion is advised. Lindsay Christine Cutshall was born on September 9th, 1981, and she was born and raised in Ohio, specifically in Fresno, Ohio. Lindsay was actually homeschooled throughout her entire youth. She was raised by Christian parents, and Lindsay grew up loving her faith. It meant everything to her. It kind of defined who she was. And her parents were just very proud of her for the woman she ended up becoming. Even as a little girl, Lindsay had aspirations to become a missionary. That was like her goal. And everyone would say that Lindsay was just the most peaceful person, just this really serene type personality. Someone who always, you can just feel comfortable around her at all times. She was not judgmental whatsoever. And she just loved you. She knew you, she loved you. When Lindsay graduated from high school, she would end up attending Appalachian Bible College, which is actually located in West Virginia. When she was there, she participated in like the spiritual outreach, and she did a lot of outdoor activities there. She loved being outdoors. She loved whitewater rafting, camping, hiking, you name it. If it's an outdoor activity, she wanted to do it. And when she was there at the college, she met a former student who had recently graduated, a young man named Jason Allen. Jason Allen was born on May 16th, 1978 in New Jersey. I know at one point he had moved to Michigan. Jason was, from a very young age as well, just a really very friendly person, very outgoing, very charismatic. He was someone who he did his own thing, and he loved doing his own thing. He just always seemed to be someone who had a smile on his face. Even when he was down, he found ways to smile. And he too grew up in a Christian household, and he came from, just like Lindsay, he came from a really good family, and he had attended Appalachian Bible College. He had graduated like a year or two prior. And so when Lindsay and Jason met, they hit it off right away, and they almost instantly fell in love with each other. They were like the ideal couple. They were really meant for each other. If there is such a thing as, destined for love with a person, it seems that they had that destiny. They really matched each other's personalities, and Jason also loved being outdoors. He was an outdoor enthusiast. He loved doing all the same things she did, and so they were able to very quickly bond over that. Both of them had aspirations to be missionaries. Both of them wanted to spend the rest of their lives not only together, but also doing missionary work as a couple together. After about 5 or 6 months or so, Jason decided that it was time, and he wanted to propose to Lindsay. And he first would ask Lindsay's father for his daughter's hand in marriage. And Lindsay's parents loved Jason, absolutely loved him. They knew he was the perfect person for their daughter. They see this very godly young man who has dedicated his life to his faith and who has the same goals and aspirations as Lindsay. They couldn't be more proud of this couple. And so, of course, the father says, absolutely, you can marry my daughter. And so Jason and Lindsay would, they officially got engaged. They would end up having a wedding shower together. This is actually a photo from that shower. The plan was for them to actually do some summer work in California. They were going to be doing some ministry work in California, specifically at a Bible camp or a Christian camp. So they were both camp counselors at a place called Rock and Water Christian Camp, which was located near Lotus, California. And so they were going to be spending the summer of 2004 there. And then when that was all wrapped up, they were going to get married. So on June 1st, 2004, they would actually drive from Ohio all the way to the West Coast. They were going to be going to Lotus, California for the camp. They would spend a couple of months very happily as camp counselors, leading the youth, showing them hiking tips. They were taking them rock climbing. They were going on outdoor adventures. They were going whitewater rafting. Everything that this couple loved doing, they were now, doing with these kids. And everyone loved them as counselors. Lindsay would call her mom every Sunday from a payphone to say, what's happening that week, and just sort of filling her in on their adventures they've had. And according to Lindsay's mom, Lindsay was just having the time of her life. This was it for her. She was just so excited for the next adventure. The next adventure that sadly would never come. So in August of 2004, once the camp was winding down, Lindsay and Jason planned to do a little bit of vacationing there in California. They were going to be traveling about 130 miles southwest to the San Francisco area. And they were going to be doing some sightseeing, maybe do some camping, just sort of do some traveling just before the whole marriage thing begins. And this is actually a photo of the two of them during that San Francisco trip. Literally photos that were taken just days or so before they would be killed. So they left Lotus on August 13th, 2004 for their trip to San Francisco. They were supposed to come back to the camp on Sunday after that, weekend, because they still had another week or so of work to do at the camp. But by Sunday, Lindsay and Jason never showed back up. That Sunday as well, Lindsay never called her mom, and her mom knew something was wrong because Lindsay wouldn't do that. She had been doing it every Sunday for months now. Something's wrong. After a couple of days of not hearing from Lindsay or Jason, they contacted Jason's family. They hadn't heard from him either. They contacted the camp. The camp says they haven't shown back up. We're afraid of something has happened to them. And so Lindsay's parents will travel from Ohio. They fly to California. And when they arrive, they file a missing persons report. They report both the couple missing. On Wednesday, August 18th, 2004, a park ranger was driving down the road near Fishhead Beach. This is located just outside or right next to Jenner, California. This is an actual photo of the vehicle that park ranger found. It appeared to be abandoned. There was no signs of any kind of foul play. Nothing was broken, no blood or anything. It was just unusual. And it was on this cliff overlooking Fishhead Beach. So the park ranger calls in the plates, and once he does that, he is immediately contacted, and they tell him that's the plates of a missing person. We have a missing couple who belongs to that car. So once the officer hears that, he then begins to climb down the hill to go to the beach itself to see if maybe the couple is there. And so as he walks down the beach, he sees 2 sleeping bags on the beach. And it appears there are 2 people inside those sleeping bags. When he got close enough to see them, he knew right away that they were dead. Both of them had very obvious bullet holes in them. There was a couple of backpacks next to the bodies, and once the other police officers arrived, they were able to process this now, obviously, as a crime scene, and they find inside the bags identification for each person, and the 2 bodies they found, in fact, belonged to Lindsay Cutshall and Jason Allen. Both had been shot by a single gunshot wound to the head. There were no shell casings found at the scene, and that told police that this person knew what they were doing. They knew to collect those shells. And so this told them that this was a cold, calculated type of person. They also knew right away that it wasn't a murder-suicide because you couldn't collect the shell casing after you put a gun to your head and pulled the trigger. There was nothing missing from their backpacks. I mean, their car was just up the cliff. Nothing was stolen from that. Everything that they had with them, that this couple had with them, was there. So this wasn't a robbery. The coroner would determine that neither of the victims had been raped. This was just 2 people who appeared to have been sleeping in their sleeping bags and were shot to death by a completely random stranger. This was a couple that did not know anyone in this area. They didn't really know many people in California other than the people at the camp, but this is 130 miles away from that camp. They knew no one in San Francisco, no one that would be following them or stalking them or anything like that. They did find a camera next to the bodies, and they were able to develop the photos inside, and that's how they got some of the photos that I've shown with the couple near the Golden Gate Bridge and whatnot. But there were nothing suspicious in the photos. This was just a happy couple. They were on a vacation, like every other couple who vacationed. That's what these photos showed. They found scattered next to the bodies these looked like poems or journal entries, and it was determined that the journal entries were written by either Jason or Lindsay. I think there were poems from both of them. So they needed to backtrack and see where Lindsay and Jason had been. They needed to kind of retrace their steps. And as they're doing that, they find receipts with their belongings. The receipts showed they arrived in San Francisco on August 14th, 2004, sometime in the morning. They purchased a couple of small things like Tabasco sauce. They then traveled 60 miles north to Bodega. They stopped at a local surf shop where they made a couple of tiny purchases. And then they also inquired where we could go to, camp or something like that, or maybe go to a hotel. From that point, though, because the police did speak to the people who worked at that shop. From that point moving forward, they couldn't trace their steps anymore. They just know at some point they end up at Fish Head Beach. Police put out this information, or not all of it, but some of the information pertaining to the murder on the news and in the newspapers. And they're asking for tips. They get hundreds and hundreds of tips. But one tip they get comes from a woman who says that her boyfriend was doing some really bizarre things right after the time frame this couple was killed. That he just seemed really jittery. He seemed kind of out of sorts. And this was a guy with a criminal history. The man's name that the girlfriend called in about was Sean Gallen. Sean Gallen was a self-proclaimed survivalist, that he would also love being outdoors. He was an avid hunter, but he also had a rap sheet. He had a lot of substance abuse issues as well. So they go to talk to Sean Gallen, and he basically lets them in. Police can see that Sean has bulletproof vests, guns, and other hunting gear there. That's not illegal. He's allowed to have them. They didn't see anything, just at a first glance, anything that would say that he had killed this couple. He was definitely living the survivalist lifestyle. He had frozen animal carcasses in a freezer in his home that he was, eventually going to eat. And they also knew that he was just an odd duck. From people in the area, he was just this very antisocial, very strange kind of guy, kind of kept to himself. He just rubbed people the wrong way, but not many people really knew what that meant at that time. He was just one of those people where you're like, I don't know if I want to be around him, but they don't really know why. But they had no evidence that he did anything. They basically had to let it go. This was also in an area that had a high population in vagrants and the unhoused. And the beach where Lindsay and Jason were found was actually a beach that restricted camping. It was actually illegal to camp there. So Lindsay and Jason were technically breaking the law by going there, but it actually wasn't all that uncommon because a lot of people who did not have homes would do that on that same beach as well. It was common. So they kind of looked into that community. Maybe one of these people did that. Maybe they killed him for whatever reason. Sometimes they're, mentally unwell. They're not being treated for anything because they don't have a home. They don't have a job. They don't have connections to anyone. And so they go unchecked, right? And their mental health begins to take a toll. And sometimes they just snap and these things happen. But police found absolutely no evidence that anyone from the unhoused community had anything to do with this. Around 2009, the police find out about a man named Joseph Burgess. In 1972, Burgess had committed a double homicide, and he was wanted for that homicide for quite some time. He had actually shot and killed a couple in Vancouver. They were killed on a beach, and so the way they were killed by, gunshots, it was very similar to what happened to Lindsay and Jason. But in 2009, they finally caught up to Mr. Burgess in New Mexico. But he got into a firefight, a shootout with police that ended up having him die. There was a beer can found at the Jason and Lindsay crime scene. They found DNA on that beer can. That DNA did not match Jason or Lindsay, so they figured this might be from the killer. So they tested it against Joseph Burgess. DNA wasn't a match, not even close. And eventually they end up ruling him out. They even had theories, which is wild, that the Zodiac Killer, maybe he came out of retirement, all the way in 2004. He had, murdered people back in 1969, 1970 or so. Maybe he's still around. It's the same area, same situation. A couple's murdered, could be. But that was obviously just grasping at straws. Fast forward to March 24th, 2017. Sonoma County Sheriff's deputies, they receive a call that someone has just been shot and is possibly dead in their home. That man's name, who was shot, is Seamus Gallen. Seamus was the 36-year-old younger brother to Sean Gallen. They're a person of interest from way back at the beginning. And this time, they knew Sean committed this murder. He killed his brother. He shot and killed him. So they took this as an opportunity to go, okay, maybe we can use this to talk about, the Jason and Lindsay case. Maybe we can see what he might reveal to us. And why did he kill Seamus? They don't really know for sure, just that they got into some kind of fight. And that was about it. Sean did not waste any time confessing to killing his brother. He's like, yeah, I did it. I got my rifle, we got into a fight, shot him several times. And he didn't really seem to care. But then they lead into Lindsay and Jason, and he's like, no, I didn't do that. You guys talked to me about that years ago. I didn't do it. So, sorry. But they still had that sinking suspicion that this might just be their guy. They had that gut feeling. So they're able to get a warrant for his Facebook account. And that's when they find something very, it helps break the case open. There was a message from a former girlfriend of Sean. And that message read, quote, maybe I should just go turn you in for that 50 grand reward. Why don't you go shoot some more people and try to get away with it? And this is what jumped out to police. The only case in the entire state of California that had a $50,000 reward for it was the murders of Lindsay and Jason. That was the only one. And so for her, this girlfriend, to say $50,000 reward money, that was an immediate, oh my God, this is him. We got him. So they're about to pull the girlfriend in for questioning. But before they could do that, they actually end up finding out from a prisoner in the jail that was in jail with Sean, that Sean had confessed. He said, yep, he killed Lindsay and Jason. So police bring him back in. They're like, okay, because you just told us you didn't do it. So now what's the deal? Sean tells police, you didn't find shell casings at the scene, right? And they're like, yeah, we didn't. Now that had not been released to the public at that point at all. So they right away knew, okay, this has got to be him. He tells them where to find it, where to find the shell casings. Unbelievably, he kept them. He said he stored them in an empty soda can and gave that soda can to his dad to hide. And it was hidden on the dad's property. Police go to that exact area where he says they kept them. They found them. They actually found the shell casings in the soda can. When they compare those shell casings to the bullets found at Lindsay and Jason's crime scene, it matched. It was fired from the same gun. He then tells police, I was wearing sandals or flip-flops there when I did it, and I burned them right then and there. And so they're gone because they had blood on them. He knew the exact spot where each of them was shot. Like he could point out on a drawing exactly where in the head he shot them, and he was spot on. Again, that was never released to the public. He knew many things about the crime scene that never were put out in the public. So they knew they had their guy. He told police that he was going to be hunting near Fish Head Beach when he saw a couple trying to camp on the beach. And he said he looked at a sign that says that, camping was prohibited there. And he says, I just snapped. Right then and there, I snapped. And he said, quote, I was like, oh my God, I'm just going to start killing people. End quote. And that's exactly what he did. He walked down to the beach. The couple were both sleeping. He shot Jason first in his head, Lindsay was startled by the shot. She woke up, but she only was alert for a couple of seconds because then he shot her in the head and killing her instantly. He then drank from a beer can nearby, which would also link the DNA to him because it was his DNA found on the beer can. In June of 2019, Sean Gallen would plead no contest to all of the charges against him. He also pled no contest to the murder of his brother. He would not go to trial because he pled guilty to all 3 murders. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms, and there would be no possibility for parole. A part of those charges were also he was convicted of attempting to kill another man in 2004. Luckily, that man survived. And so Jason Allen and Lindsay Cutshall, they finally got their justice. Took some time, but it came. The peaceful, free-spirited, happy-go-lucky couple who were just about to start the best part of their lives together. This couple that was just meant to be together. They were the 2 puzzle pieces for this grand puzzle to be put together, and that finished the puzzle. They were happy. They were very happy. They were excited. They also didn't know what was coming. Jason never even knew what was happening. So I guess, there can be some solace in the fact that he never was alert when he was killed. Lindsay, unfortunately, was alert for a few seconds. But their families take comfort knowing that Jason and Lindsay were at the happiest point of their lives, that they were just all smiles. They were a couple who knew they were going to be with each other forever. They were going to do missionary work together. They were going to travel the world together doing missionary work. They were going to inspire. They were going to love. But one man, completely out of random, took all of that away in a matter of seconds. Why? Just because he wanted to. That's it. He's just a crazy guy. But in the end, he will never breathe free air again. And Lindsay and Jason and Seamus all got the justice they all very rightfully deserved. But that is it for this case, True Crime, Rooney, Dooney, Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you're new here, hello, my name is Mike. I tell true crime stories here on YouTube, obviously. So please subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. Hit the bell so you're notified when I post new videos. Drop a like, leave a comment so that way more people can see the video. I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok. You can follow my TikTok. It's in the link tree in the description of this video below and in all of my videos. So feel free to follow that if you want to. I do post compilation videos from TikTok every month here on YouTube as well. So you can always wait for those. Also in that link tree below, you'll find my case list. The case list is well over 7,500 names long now. It's in alphabetical order. You can scroll through it. If you do not see a name on that list that you would like me to cover, just send me a super quick email. The email is listed below as well. It's also in the list document. Just the name of the case, where it happened, and when it happened. I'll add that name to my list. I can't promise you when I'll cover that case, but I will get to it eventually. But if you are a direct loved one, a family member to a missing or murdered person, it's a cold case, it's unsolved, maybe it's a solved case, but you still want their story told, just let me know your family and I can make sure that case gets a higher priority to be covered. But that is it for this video, True Crime Rooney. So until the next case, ta-ta for now.